Hello students, in this video we'll see about the physiology of lactation. Lactation, it is the process of synthesis and secretion of milk from the mammary glands to feed the young. The process naturally occurs with all the post-pregnancy female mammals. How does it differ from galactorrhea? Galactorrhea is milky discharge from nipples unassociated with childbirth or nursing. It can occur in females or males at any age. It can be physiological or pathological due to hormonal imbalance. Physiology of lactation can be dealt under these headings: functional anatomy of mammary gland, phases of lactation, human milk types and composition, and finally importance of lactation. Functional anatomy of mammary gland. The fully developed mammary gland is composed of about 15 to 20 lobes separated by suspensory ligaments of Cooper. So this is a lobe which is separated from the other next lobe by the suspensory ligaments of Cooper. Each lobe has a lactiferous duct. You can see in the picture it has a lactiferous duct that opens at the nipple. Before opening to the nipple, the lactiferous duct dilates to form the lactiferous sinuses. The lobes in turn are composed of several lobules that contain the secretory structures called alveoli and the terminal portions of the ducts. So here each lobe will be having so many lobules. So you can see the right side picture. It's a picture of an alveolus. So there is a this pink color lining, the single layer of cuboidal epithelium is the milk secreting cells of the alveolus. And outside that is on the basal side of the alveolar epithelial cells, there is a myoepithelial cell layer. These myoepithelial cells are stellate smooth muscle-like cells, and contraction of these cells expels the milk from the lumens of the alveoli and ducts into the lactiferous sinus. The lactiferous ducts empty at the nipple, which is a highly innervated hairless protrusion of the breast designed for suckling by an infant. The nipple is surrounded by a pigmented hairless areola that is lubricated by sebaceous glands. The lobules and lobes are supported within a connective tissue matrix and adipose tissue. Yes, next we move on to the phases of lactation. So first is the mammogenesis, lactogenesis, galactokinesis, galactopoiesis and involution. So these are the 5 phases of lactation. We'll see about mammogenesis. Mammogenesis is the development of breast. It occurs in prenatal and postnatal life. So let's see about prenatal breast development. The lactiferous ducts, alveoli, nipple and areola develop from the epidermal ectoderm, whereas the fibrous connective tissue and fat develop from the mesenchyme. So the mammary glands are derived from 2 thickened strips of epidermal ectoderm called the mammary ridges or milk ridge, which appear during the 6th week of the intrauterine life. So it extends from the axilla to the inguinal region. But the ridge rapidly regress except in the fourth intercostal space in the thorax, where it develops as the primary mammary bud. In this picture, you can see the milk ridges extending from the on either side, extending from the axilla to the inguinal region of the embryo on either side, 2 ridges, and it rapidly regresses except at the 4th intercostal space in the thorax, where it exists as the primary mammary bud. Is now in the primary mammary bud that persists in the thoracic region. So this is the structure of the primary mammary bud. So the ectodermal cells at that region, the primary mammary bud, begin to divide and they penetrate the underlying mesenchyme and give rise to several secondary buds. These are canalized by the end of the prenatal life. The epidermis, where the gland originated, becomes depressed to form a shallow mammary pit or the epithelial pit on which the ducts open. So that's the mammary pit. So the nipple is formed by it is formed during the perinatal period due to the proliferation of the mesenchyme under the areola in the area of the mammary pit. That is, the nipple is formed by evagination of the mammary pit. The prenatal development of the breast is regulated by paracrine signals from mesenchyme and also the parathormone related protein. There is no role of sex hormones in the prenatal development of breast. And after birth until puberty, the tubule networks of the breast buds remain rudimentary. Most humans have 2 nipples, but in some cases more than 2 nipples will develop. So that's condition, you call it as polythilia. The incidence is around 2%. The additional nipples usually grow along the milk line. Inverted nipple. The nipple, I told you the nipple is formed by evagination of the underlying mesenchyme. So if it fails to develop normally and evert after birth, it results in inverted nipple. Now you will see about the postnatal breast development. I told you at birth there will be a tiny nipple with few ducts radiating from it. That is like a rudiment. That is the at birth. So until puberty, the tubule networks of the breast bud remain rudimentary. So during puberty, there will be enlargement of the breast. It's called as thelarchy. The ducts will sprout and elongate, and bulbous structures at the tips of the ducts. So here you can see at the tip of the ducts called terminal end buds are formed. The ducts will penetrate into the fat pad and branch. This continues until a tree-like network of branch ducts fill the entire fat pad of the breast. There is growth of the stromal tissue and accumulation of adipose tissue also. The nipple areolar complex will begin to increase in size. So the main hormones involved are estrogen, growth hormone and local growth factors. So in the adult, with the onset of menstrual cycle, during so there will be hormonal hormones will be influencing the development of breast with each menstrual cycle. During proliferative phase, estrogen will cause ductal growth, whereas during the luteal phase, the progesterone will cause growth of terminal ductules and rudimentary alveoli. The full development of breast occurs only during pregnancy. So during pregnancy, there is enlargement of breast. The nipple gets larger and pigmented, areola becomes pigmented and sebaceous glands become prominent. The parenchymal growth of the breast during development occurs at the expense of stroma, which is degraded to make room for enlarging lobulo-alveolar structures. During the first half of pregnancy, there will be extensive ductal growth and branching, and there will also be growth of stroma and deposition of fat. And it will be mainly under the estrogen effect. During the second half of pregnancy, there will be lobulo-alveolar development. It will be mainly under the effect of progesterone and later by prolactin. The cells within alveoli undergo complete differentiation, polarize and form the secretory alveoli capable of producing milk. So the hormones involved in mammogenesis are mainly the estrogen, progesterone and prolactin, but also other hormones like growth hormone and insulin like growth factors, insulin, thyroid hormone, adrenocortical hormones, placental protein hormones like the placental growth hormone and placental lactogen also contribute to mammary development and milk formation during pregnancy. Prolactin and estrogen synergize in producing breast growth, but high levels of estrogen and progesterone during pregnancy antagonizes the milk producing effect of prolactin on the breast. So prolactin will cause production of milk, that is secretion of milk, but it will be kept suppressed, that milk secretion will be kept suppressed by the high levels of estrogen and progesterone during pregnancy. Only during the last few weeks of pregnancy, when this estrogen and progesterone levels begin to fall down, the milk secreting activity of prolactin will be coming into action. So next we move on to the lactogenesis. So lactogenesis means it is synthesis and secretion of milk. As I told you already, it occurs in 2 stages. That is, stage 1 is during pregnancy, during the last few weeks of pregnancy. So till before that it will be kept, there will be no secretion of milk. Only last few weeks of pregnancy, when the estrogen and progesterone level fall down, the prolactin will cause the alveoli to secrete milk, but it is very little. It's not more than few ml. So main milk, the voluminous secretion of milk mainly occurs only after childbirth. That is stage 2 lactogenesis. And prolactin is the hormone of lactation. Other hormones which have a role in lactation are the growth hormone, cortisol, parathyroid hormone, thyroid hormones and insulin. So these hormones mainly provide the by their metabolic effects, they produce the amino acids, fatty acids, glucose and calcium required for milk formation. So these are the various transport mechanisms involved in the secretion of milk. So proteins synthesized in rough endoplasmic reticulum and modified in Golgi apparatus, as well as the sugar, that is the lactose, will be secreted into the alveolar lumen by exocytosis. And the fats will be secreted by apocrine secretion, that is a part of the membrane of the cell will also be secreted along with the milk fat globule. There will be transmembrane, the secretion of water and small molecules, and transcytosis, that is from this side to the lumen. There will be secretion of immunoglobulins and some hormones and growth factors. And then more important is the paracellular transport of immune cells. So breast milk is actually a living fluid because it contains corpuscles containing the leukocytes. So they will enter into the milk by the paracellular route, but the paracellular pathway is open only in pregnancy. So that is the last few weeks of pregnancy, the milk is synthesized. During that time only the paracellular pathway is operating. So it doesn't occur in fully mature breast, that is after childbirth. So this may be the reason why the living cells, that is the leukocytes, are present only in the early milk called as colostrum and not in the mature milk. So actually the colostrum will contain colostrum corpuscles containing alveolar cells and leukocytes loaded with fat. Galactokinesis. So what is galactokinesis? It is the expulsion of milk. So milk is continuously produced into the alveoli, but does not flow continuously from the alveoli into the duct. So expulsion of milk into the lactiferous duct and lactiferous sinus is called galactokinesis. It occurs by a reflex called neuroendocrine reflex, and the hormone for galactokinesis is oxytocin. So let us see how the reflex takes place. In this picture you can see here, so this is the hypothalamus and this is the pituitary gland. Okay. So in the hypothalamus you have the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei. So the axon, the cell bodies here, they will synthesize two hormones, antidiuretic hormone, that is ADH, and oxytocin. So here in the milk ejection reflex, oxytocin is important. So here the oxytocin will be synthesized by the neurons in the paraventricular as well as in the supraoptic nuclei. They will be transported along the axons and they will be stored in the nerve endings in the posterior pituitary. So here they will be stored in the posterior pituitary. And so now we will see what happens in the milk ejection reflex or milk let down reflex. So when the baby sucks the nipple, the touch receptors, the somatic receptors around the nipple and areola will be stimulated. The signals will be passing through the nerves. It will reach the spinal cord. It will ascend via the ascending pathways of the spinal cord, reach the brainstem, and from there it reaches the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei, which gets stimulated. And so what happens, the oxytocin from these nerve endings will be released into the blood. So the oxytocin will enter into the oxytocin enter into the blood, and it will reach the breast of the mother. The oxytocin will contract the myoepithelial cells which surrounds, I told you, it will surround the alveolar cells. It will cause contraction of the myoepithelial cells. When the myoepithelial cells contract, it causes expression of milk from the alveoli into the ducts at a pressure of about 10 to 20 millimeter mercury. So within 30 seconds to 1 minute after a baby begins to suckle, milk will begin to flow. Not only the suckling of the baby, even the sight, sound and thought of the child will elicit this milk ejection reflex. And also the milk will, so oxytocin is released into maternal blood. This oxytocin reaches the opposite breast and milk flows from other breast also. So I will repeat, when the baby suckles the nipple of the mother, the somatic touch receptors around the areola and the nipple are stimulated, and the signals are passed via the nerves to the spinal cord, and it ascends via the ascending sensory pathways and it reaches the hypothalamus of the mother. From the, that is, it reaches the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei. The neurons get stimulated, which will release the oxytocin hormone stored in the nerve endings into the maternal blood. This oxytocin will go and contract the myoepithelial cells of the breast, expressing the milk from the alveoli to the ducts. Here you can see the signals reaching the hypothalamus not only cause secretion of oxytocin, it also goes and stimulate the other group of neurons called dopaminergic neurons. Sits here. It also stimulates the dopaminergic neurons. So what is the role of dopamine? The dopaminergic neurons, they secrete the dopamine, and it will enter into the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal blood vessels. So these blood vessels convey the dopamine into the dopamine to the anterior pituitary. So one of the hormones secreted by anterior pituitary is prolactin. So this dopamine actually antagonizes the secretion of prolactin. So dopamine is the prolactin inhibiting factor. So dopamine has prolactin inhibiting effect. So what happens? When the ascending sensory signals from the mother's breast reaches the hypothalamus, it will inhibit the dopaminergic neurons. So dopamine secretion will be reduced. So prolactin secretion will be increased. So there will be secretion of, so when the baby suckles the breast, there is secretion of oxytocin and there is secretion of prolactin also. So inhibitors of oxytocin secretion, they are mainly stress, sympathetic nervous stimulation and alcohol. So only mothers are advised to feed their baby in a very calm and relaxing mood. So next we see about the galactopoiesis. So what is galactopoiesis? It is the maintenance of milk secretion. So that is after childbirth. So usually prolactin level will fall after 10 days. But I told you already, by the suckling reflex, what happens, not only oxytocin, there will be pulsatile secretion of prolactin with nursing. So each time the mother feeds her baby, there will be pulsatile secretion of prolactin. So there will be secretion of prolactin, which will cause synthesis and secretion of milk, and also oxytocin, which will cause expulsion of milk. So the main galactopoietic factor. So galactopoiesis means it is maintenance of milk secretion. The main galactopoietic factor is the suckling by the baby. So as long as the baby is nursed and the breast is emptied, there will be continued secretion of milk. Because if the breast is not empty, suppose what happens is something called lactation inhibiting factor in the milk, which will so when the milk is not empty, there will be breast engorgement. This lactation inhibiting factor will inhibit further secretion of milk. So there must be the baby should be nursed and the breast should be empty, then there will be continuous secretion of milk. So it's like a demand supply system. And not only prolactin, oxytocin, other hormones, as I told you already, growth hormone, cortisol, parathyroid hormones, thyroid hormones and insulin are also important for galactopoiesis. Involution. So upon weaning, so that is when the mother stops breastfeeding her baby, most epithelial cells in the differentiator alveoli undergo apoptosis and are cleared by macrophages. So progressive remodeling back to a pre-pregnancy like state will occur. So that is involution. So to sum up the phases of lactation, we saw about mammogenesis, that is development of breast in prenatal and postnatal life, lactogenesis, that is synthesis and secretion of milk, galactokinesis, expulsion of milk, galactopoiesis, maintenance of milk secretion and release, and finally involution. What is witch milk? So both newborn males and females, there will be some milky discharge from their nipples for about a few days or even up to 2 months. So this secretion of milky discharge from the newborn breast is called as witch milk. What is it due to? It is due to the maternal hormones. So in pregnancy, there will be an increase in estrogen and progesterone, all the maternal hormones will be increased. So it will pass into the fetal circulation by way of placenta and will cause production of witch milk. So next we see about the types and composition of human milk. There are 3 types of breast milk: colostrum or early milk, transitional milk and mature milk. So colostrum or early milk. So it is produced, I told you, it is secreted during the last few weeks of pregnancy. It is very minimal amount only, and it will be produced till 4 days after delivery. But colostrum, though the volume is very minimal, it is very, very important because it's very rich in proteins, and it contains colostrum corpuscles. I told you that is the alveolar cells and leukocytes loaded with fat. So these colostrum corpuscles are very important. It has to be given to the baby because newborn intestine also can absorb proteins like immunoglobulins without digestion for a short period after birth. The absorption mainly occurs in their jejunum. So you normally the protein will be digested by the intestine, but the newborn intestine for a short period after birth, what happens? It can absorb the proteins like immunoglobulins without digestion. That is very, very important for for the immunity of the baby. So colostrum is produced in the till 4 days after delivery. And transitional milk. So mature milk will be started producing approximately 10 days after delivery till the termination of the breastfeeding. So in between both there will be a transitional milk produced from 4 to 10 days. So here is the comparison of human colostrum, mature breast milk and cow's milk. So when you compare, you can see the human milk has more sugar, less protein and less salt. But the protein is less, but what happens, the proteins in human milk is more suitable for human infants, human newborns, and it produces less allergy. It can be easily digested and absorbed. So the quality wise, the human breast milk proteins will superior than the cow's milk. And also human milk has less salt, so it will produce less load to the newborn kidneys. Newborn kidneys still they will not be fully mature, so the human milk has less salt, so they will have only less load, whereas the cow's milk the salt content is more. And further, the human milk will have they have immunological and immunological benefits. So these are all the immunological benefits of the breast milk. So I told you the immunoglobulins present in the human milk can be better absorbed by the human infants. So immunoglobulins like IgA, IgM, IgE, IgD, especially the IgA, they protect against bacterial and viral infections. And there is something called bifidus factors. So this bifidus factor, they promote formation of healthy bacterial colonization in infants' GIT. And lactoferrin. So lactoferrin is an iron binding protein that will help the baby intestine to absorb more iron in the breast milk. So it will not be present in the formula feed, so the artificial feeds, so that the iron absorption there will be less, whereas the human milk, breast milk contains lactoferrin, which will increase the absorption of the iron present in the milk. And also lactoferrin will promote healthy bacterial growth. And human milk also contains many antibacterial factors like lactoperoxidase and lysozyme. So these are all the important immunological benefits. So the breast milk human breast milk contains nutritional benefits, immunological benefits and also emotional benefits to the both mother and baby. Importance of lactation. So what are the advantages to the baby? It's a balanced diet. So nutritional wise, it is the balanced diet, easily digestible, and it protects against infection. So it has so many immunological benefits. It has growth factors and reduced chances of allergy. And it is also sterile, inexpensive and convenient. So if the baby is fed by formula feed, there is more chances of getting the feed the bottles or the milk getting contaminated, whereas breast milk can be directly fed, so it is more sterile and convenient. What are the advantages to the mother? So I told you, each time the mother nurses her baby, there is secretion of oxytocin. So oxytocin will cause contraction of the uterus. So it will promote the involution of the uterus in the mother in the postpartum period. It will cause lactational amenorrhea. So what is lactational amenorrhea? Usually when the mother breastfeeds her baby exclusively by exclusive breastfeeding, there will be amenorrhea. That is menstruation will not occur. This is because the prolactin, the hormone for lactation, also inhibits the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. So the gonadotropin releasing hormone, that is GnRH. When GnRH is inhibited, it will not cause the release of LH or FSH from the pituitary, which will not produce the effect on the ovary. So there will be no ovulation and there will be no menstruation also. So that is lactational amenorrhea. And breastfeeding also gives protection against breast engorgement and breast cancer. There will be emotional bonding between the mother and the baby, and it will also protect against obesity in the mother. So because milk production is a calorie spending process, so when the mother exclusively breastfeeds her baby, each day she burns about 50 grams of fat to produce the energy. So it gives helps the mother to shed off the extra kilos gained during pregnancy. So it protects against obesity. So next we see about some interesting facts. Breastfeeding without birthing. Can you guess? Can a female start breastfeeding even without giving birth to a baby? Yes, she can. So that is the basis of induced lactation protocol. It was developed by Dr. Jack Newman and Leonard Goldfarb. So what they do here, they give sequential, for about 6 months or 1 year, they give sequential administration of birth control pills. So birth control pills, nothing but it contains estrogen and progesterone. So they give estrogen and progesterone and they prime the breast. They prime they cause growth of the breast, and also they cause growth of the ducts, alveoli, and they also cause breast development. They make the breast ready for lactation. And then they give domperidone. Domperidone is the dopamine antagonist, so which will inhibit the dopamine secretion. So hence what happens, the prolactin will increase, so it will cause milk secretion. And for expulsion, they will use breast pump, or they will allow the baby to repeatedly suckle the breast. So these 3 things will be given sequentially to induce lactation in a female even without getting pregnant or giving birth to a baby. So this is very much useful for adopting mothers. So that is the induced lactation protocol by Newman and Goldfarb. So we saw mother lactating even without becoming pregnant or giving birth to child. Can a male lactate? Is nursing the baby sole responsibility of mother? Definitely the nature says no. It is interesting to know about paternal lactation, that is lactation in males in some bat species. So it's called dyak fruit bat. The consumption of plants with high concentrations of phytoestrogens, a hormone-like molecule that may cause mammogenesis and lactogenesis in male bats. Yes, to sum up, we learnt about the functional anatomy of the mammary gland, phases of lactation which include mammogenesis, lactogenesis, and galactokinesis, galactopoiesis and involution, and human milk types and composition, and finally importance of lactation. Thank you.